Welcome to the BamCam with Jack Burnett and Alison Castellano from RFG Advisory. In this podcast, we explore how life and financial well-being are intertwined. We'll look into areas concerning motivation and attitude, financial planning, investing, and much more. Our goal is to empower you with the information and resources you need to help manage your money and strive towards the life you've always wanted. So sit back, relax, and join us on this journey of uncovering your true self and achieving financial independence.
Hello and welcome to the BamCam podcast with your hosts, Jack Burnett and Alison Castellano. I'm Wendy McConnell. Now, we're going to be talking about adulting today.
That's right.
Oh, no fun.
No, you're right. It's no fun at all.
We thought it was going to be fun when we were kids, but yeah.
Well, everybody wants to kind of grow up and be an adult when they're young and so forth. And sometimes it's a little more complicated than people think.
And no class in school teaches you how to be an adult.
That's probably true. And you know, my wife and I have kind of figured out most of it along the way. So since I was in this profession when Alison emerged, she's tried to be more focused on making good decisions as an adult, especially after she got married. We thought it'd be a good idea to talk about some of the challenges that millennials and Gen Z folks that are entering their working careers, the challenges they face.
All right, let's get into it then.
So first of all, there's more to adulting than just landing that first big job out of college.
So true. It just kind of starts the process of what you have to do. And what I always recommend to young people, and you've heard me tell you this many times, and that probably took a year or two to sink in your career, is to live within your means. And your first year or two, you struggled with that a little bit.
Yeah.
And probably to some extent, I enabled you because I kind of bailed you out a little bit.
Yeah.
But it is vitally important that you not dig yourself into a hole that you can't work yourself out of very quickly. Many people get enamored with their spending capabilities through credit cards and credit that's available, and they get excited about toys, cars, houses, or whatever, and they don't really understand and appreciate the necessity of living within their means.
Yeah.
Because digging out of a hole can sometimes take 5-10 times as long as it takes to get into that hole.
Yeah. And it's really hard. I think for me, you see all the social media consumerism happening, and you want the newest and latest and greatest, and you feel inadequate if you don't have that.
You have all these influencers out there that are talking about all these wonderful things in life, and they're teasing you and trying to attract you to all these wonderful things, which are probably not realistic and a real thing.
Yeah.
But it makes you feel like you're missing something.
Oh, for sure.
But it's very important that you do all these steps. But the key and the foundation is living within your means.
I like to say now that I'd rather have FOMO in my retirement years than FOMO right now when I'm young.
Well, you'd rather have FOMO now than in your retirement years. You just got that backwards, didn't it?
Yes, I did get it backwards. You're right. I don't want to have FOMO in my retirement year.
Correct.
I'd rather have FOMO now.
On our last episode, we talked about, the kind of lifestyle that your mom and I are able to live because we were disciplined through the years. Not perfect, but disciplined through that process.
Yeah, and one of the things y'all always said growing up too was pay yourself first.
True.
Let's talk about that.
True. That is what we always did, was we saved for retirement first. It came out of our, we tried to maximize our contributions to our retirement plans, and we did that even when it was difficult and cash flow was tighter and more challenging in our lives. So we also tried to manage large purchases well. If we needed to save for something, We tried to plan in advance for a trip or things of that nature. Did not try to drive the latest, fanciest cars. We're not big into cars, as you know. I typically drive a car for about 10 years and don't drive a particularly fancy car. I drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I'll usually, and this is about my fifth one?
Probably.
Over 35 years, maybe.
I learned how to drive a Jeep.
Yeah. So it's a nice car, and it's a comfortable car, and it has all the features and benefits, and it's a relatively safe car. But it's, so many people want to drive the more luxurious vehicles, BMWs and Mercedes and things of that nature. And there's opportunities to lease cars and so forth. I personally like not having a car payment, and which for the most of my adult life, I've not had car payments. And so it's, I'm managing those opportunities. Also managing purchasing a house is important because people want to often extend and buy more house than they can really afford. And so that makes them
house rich, cash poor. Yeah. Another saying that I grew up listening to.
Correct. And while we lived in a nice house and it was comfortable, it was even at time, and probably to some extent, we pushed that envelope a little bit. But I think it's vitally important, I think, for young people to live within their means from the standpoint of the type of house. You obviously want a safe and comfortable and clean place to live and everything for your family. But it is important that you not try to fall into that trap of buying more house than you can afford.
I remember when Adrian and I were looking at houses, we got pre-approved for a mortgage that was far more expensive than we were comfortable.
I remember that.
And it was really uncomfortable, and we had to really kind of rein our real estate agent in.
And you asked me about that. And I said, well, can you buy a house in a good neighborhood and everything for what you want to spend? And the answer was yes.
Yeah.
And you're in a nice neighborhood and you're in a great school district. And so it's there, as your family's expanding, you're already starting to think about maybe another chapter there. But it's been fine. And you've been in that house, 4 years?
4 years. It'll be 5 in December.
Okay. So it's been a very nice house from that perspective and very good. And in the meantime, you've been able to do some other good things with your life and save, because one of the things that you got thrown a curveball with was an unexpected expense.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because that was a big curveball.
Yeah. So no one is immune to unexpected expenses in adulthood. And Adrian and I had a huge one with our infertility and IVF treatments.
Right. And roughly what did that cost?
About $40,000.
Okay. That's a big chunk.
It is.
And how much did you borrow to pay for that?
Zero.
Okay.
We were able to pay for all of it.
Well, how much did people give you to pay for that?
Not much.
No, well, I mean, essentially zero.
Essentially zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we had a little bit of help, but not a ton. Nothing like life-changing.
Right. So you didn't put it on credit cards. You didn't do that. You had been saving.
We had been saving.
Not necessarily for that.
No, not for that. But we had the money and the cash, and we were able to fund that goal.
Correct. And you'd continued to be driving paid off cars during that process. So it allowed you to be able to manage that unexpected cost, not without pain, because that was a big expense that you didn't really sign up for, but it happened.
And there were lots of tears. I know a lot of people who are in that world who take out loans.
True.
And for infertility treatment is not a guarantee. It's a chance.
Correct.
And that's a really hard thing, I can imagine, to have to take out a loan for something that's just chance.
But I have come across so many people after you had to go that route that have also gone that route. And it's such a blessing that God has allowed that technology to develop. And otherwise, you probably would be childless or short of an adoption route or something, which can also be expensive.
Yeah.
And so it is a wonderful blessing. And of course, we have Laura, my granddaughter, and she is beautiful and fantastic. She's a little over 11 months old, almost. We'll be celebrating her birthday next month. So that's exciting. Speaking of children and grandchildren, they're expensive.
Yes. Yeah. The smallest person in our house is the most expensive person in our house. It's amazing how that works.
Right.
But just all the things that babies need. And I could go back to the consumerism thing, because all these baby products, all their advertising tells you that the more expensive it is, the safer it is. It really tugs at your heartstrings as a first-time parent.
Well, you don't want to endanger your child.
No, but if it's on the market, it's got to be safe, right?
That's fine.
You would think most things are, at least.
So, but what about daycare?
Daycare is expensive. Childcare is expensive, no matter what route you do. Or some people choose not to put their children in daycare, and they may become a one-income family.
Correct. So, having a child is expensive, but then there's expenses down the road that you have to factor in, such as college expenses and so forth. So college can be very expensive, as most of you know, and it's something that you should probably plan for over the life of your child. This is an area that my wife and I did not plan as adequately as I recommend for people today. And this is an area where we are helping you and Adrian with that, because there's various types of savings plans. Probably the most common is a 529 plan, which is a savings plan. It's now can be used for beyond college, can also be used for so private school before college. But it is there's several different ways to save for college, and some have some tax advantages. So, for instance, the 529 plan, the College Counts 529 plan for Alabama, offers a state income tax deduction. Okay. So that is an opportunity there also. But children are expensive. I always talked about you and your brother. Yeah. I'd be a lot better off financially if y'all weren't around, but not emotionally.
Yeah.
So they're
worth it.
It is worth it, but it is definitely with a cost involved. So beyond the challenges of parenthood and raising a family and everything, there's some other areas that adults have to deal with. What's next that hits you on your mind trying to be an adult and learn?
Well, one of the first things, you have all this money. Hopefully you're not spending it all. You need to save.
Okay.
How do you get started saving? What are your options? Do you invest it? Where do you invest it? That all feels like a big black hole when you're young. So,
well, part of it is identifying your goals. So often, if you're not a homeowner yet, for example, your initial savings might be for trying to save to improve your home situation, that you'd like to buy a house or something of that nature. So your goals might be short-term, intermediate term, or long-term. Intermediate term can be, say, college savings type of things, but it also might be savings to improve your household vehicle situation, where you want to do that and not just go in and not put any money down to buy a car or whatever. So, but then long term, you have retirement savings and what to do. So then you have the challenge of, how do you save and manage that? So you have your investment opportunities and your goals, and that is determined somewhat by your tolerance for risk. And part of what we do is to help educate clients so that they not only are just investing with us when they need to invest, but it is also investing in a way that they understand and they're learning from that process. We've had somewhat volatile markets in the last 3 years. We've had 2 bear markets. One was a very short-term bear market in the early stage of the pandemic with COVID. And then we had a more prolonged bear market, actually one of the longest bear markets, sustained bear markets in history, primarily through most of 2022. It actually started in the fall of 21. And most bear markets don't last that long. Yeah. So educating clients and helping them to understand the nuances of long-term market history and understanding how to invest and the difference between equities and fixed income and alternative investments and things of that nature, and helping them to understand what's appropriate for them to help them achieve their goals within their tolerance for risk is part of the things I enjoy. And I think you're going to also enjoy because of your teaching background. Part of what our responsibility is to educate people so that they understand how their investments are working.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that part of our work very much.
Yeah. And we get to hold clients' hands as they go along this journey.
Correct. One thing also that's a little different, I think, with your generation, Alison, than it was in my generation, is that people change jobs more frequently in this era. You have been a teacher. You were a teacher for 10 years before you became a financial advisor. Your husband, Adrian, has had 2 jobs in his approximately 10-year, not quite 10-year career. Your mom, my wife, Barbara, worked for one company for almost 38 years, her entire career. She had a couple of different roles, but she stayed within the same company. That's virtually unheard of today for people to stay with one company. So with changing jobs, that impacts a lot of things that people need to do, one of which is managing the retirement plans.
Yeah. So most of us will have a retirement plan through our employer. That's one of our buckets that we have for retirement.
Right.
But when you leave, you need to think about what you're going to do with that money.
Right. There's options. You can often leave it there, and there's some advantages to doing that. There's some disadvantages to doing that. But people that change jobs frequently, and it's pretty common in the first 10 years of someone's career that they might change jobs 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. That used to be really frowned on, but it's not necessarily abnormal in this day and age. You don't want to have little tiny buckets of money necessarily here, there, and everywhere. That becomes a little cumbersome and difficult to manage, although that's an option to do that. But it may make sense to consolidate and have things better under control. Also, your benefits are impacted from that standpoint. Your healthcare benefits, some cases, life insurance benefits and other types of benefits are impacted when you change jobs. So those are things that financial advisors can help advise and guide you on and help you manage. So let's talk a little bit about the long term.
Okay.
So
long-term retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I've kind of mentioned before, there's like kind of 3 buckets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people will have Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have their personal savings, and they'll have their retirement plan that was through their employer.
Say it might be a 401k plan. It might be a pension, or it could be both if you're really fortunate. But generally a retirement savings plan through work. Historically, first of all, Social Security will not replace your salary, your income in retirement.
Yeah.
Social Security full retirement age for young people is 67. It's hard to imagine that the government won't change the rules on Social Security sometime over the next 30 years. But for now, it's age 67 for full retirement age. You can draw Social Security at age 62, but it's reduced and discounted. So there is an advantage to working longer from a Social Security standpoint. But if you have adequately prepared through savings, either through your 401k or your personal savings or both, that gives you greater options. Young people, when I talk to young people today, and I talk about young people being anybody under 60, since I'm 66, most are interested in retiring earlier rather than later. I think most people I know that are in their 60s and still working are not necessarily as looking forward. Most of them enjoy their work. But to retire early, it absolutely requires savings discipline over the course of the accumulation phase in life so that you can have a distribution phase of life.
So you're telling me that time is really your best friend.
Well, time is your best friend, but if you want to retire at 60, for example, let's say you start your career at 22 or 23, then you have 35, 37 years to save on that. And your life expectancy at 60, you need to plan for potentially your
close to
retirement.
100,
your
probably.
retirement can last as long as the accumulation phase. So it means there is no time to waste. And if you're not already planning for retirement, you need to have a plan to do that. And every year you delay that shortens that time frame in which to accomplish your goals.
Yeah.
It's kind of a scary thought.
That is a scary thought. So every year that you delay just means you have to save more.
Absolutely. And it puts more pressure on that. And the numbers you just need the numbers to work. So that's where advanced retirement planning can come into play. And, helping clients to understand what they need to do to achieve, at a minimum, replacing your income in retirement and maybe enhancing your income potentially if you want to. So that's very important. And again, the longevity in planning, people just don't think about that, but there's the chances are your retirement, and you need, for a couple, it needs to be till the second of that couple dies is what you plan on. So, two people that are 60 that are likely, at least a likelihood of one of them living past 90 is greater than 50%, just actuarially. Yeah. So it needs to last a long time. Another area that people need to think about is insurance.
That's another black hole. Like I just would not even know where to start if I was just graduating from college and getting my first job.
Right. Well, one thing that's interesting, there are some companies out there that really tend to focus on calling on young professionals and trying to lure them into sometimes the wrong insurance products and everything. Your death protection needs for life insurance are the highest when you're youngest because you need to protect that potential future stream of revenue, even though the likelihood of dying young is low. So it's important that you have the right kind of insurance. And that's something that we can help with in doing, but analyzing what your needs are first and not just presenting a policy that might benefit the salesperson more than it does you. So you have those types of things. You also want to be smart with your property and casualty insurance. If you own a home, you have to have homeowners insurance. If you have cars, you have to have auto insurance. And making sure you have the right type of coverage and everything there is something that we can discuss and help with and make sure that you're not overpaying for coverage you don't need or undercovering things that you do need to protect from that standpoint. And then also from a long-term perspective, some people want to have peace of mind of what happens if I require long-term care. Not many people that are your age think about long-term care, but when people get into their 40s and 50s, they start thinking about it, or they may have seen a parent or a grandparent go through having to be in assisted living or a nursing home or something of that nature, or adult daycare. Actually, more long-term care is administered in the home than in any other setting. That's something else to factor into that process. Lastly, I think one thing that people need to do, and it's very important, particularly once you have children, is estate planning. And
that's a third really big black hole. Like, what even is that?
Correct. Well, estate planning is managing your affairs after you die. So it's having some control of what happens after you die.
So what goes to who?
Well, first and foremost, for a parent, it's who's going to care for that minor child. What you don't want is the state to determine who that's going to be. You can control that by designating a person that you want to raise your children in the very unfortunate, unlikely event something happens to one or both parents. That's vitally important. But also it helps control the process of distribution of assets. Another thing that I think is important with estate planning documents is the ancillary documents that come. So having durable powers of attorney, so you can, if something happens to one spouse, who can handle the affairs of that. Also healthcare, making decisions if you're incapacitated, either permanently or temporarily, to make health decisions. You want to be able to have someone you trust with a healthcare proxy to be able to do that, or living will decisions on, you occasionally run across things in the news where there's big fights over somebody wanting to essentially pull the plug necessarily when somebody is considered brain dead or whatever, and families can be in dispute. Well, you can deal with that on the front end based on expressing your wishes from that perspective. And so estate documents are very important. And then depending on the complexity of a household, it might also involve trusts and things of that nature to be able to control from the grave in management of assets. For instance, you might want to designate let's say you have teenage children and they're showing a little bit of immaturity. You would not necessarily want them to inherit money at 18 years of age or 21 or even 25. Sometimes you might think, I want that child to be 30 before they can really get access to any substantial wealth, because they may not have the responsibility of managing that to their best interest. Yeah. So that comes into play. So it's a lot.
That is a lot. and some of it, I feel like we're ending kind of on a down note, talking about wills and.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think that we'll do on some future episodes here is maybe dig deeper into some of these subjects and talk a little bit more on how to really deal with each one of these areas, because life is complex and it's always dynamic, and the world keeps throwing curveballs at us, and a good financial advisor can help hold your hand, keep you on track and do that.
And navigate life.
So that might be a reason to call you.
It would be a great reason to call us.
If people wanted to call and get more information, how would they go about doing that?
You can reach me at 205-504-9868.
And you can call me at 205-613-4994.
Well, thank you both. And thank you for joining us today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, I'm Wendy McConnell.
Thank you for listening to the BamCam podcast with Jack Burnett and Alison Castellano from RFG Advisory. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at rfgadvisorywealth.com/Jack Burnett or give us a call at 205-510-9072. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Information here may be provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither our guest nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of our guest. They do not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, its employees, or its clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by RFG Advisory or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives of Private Client Services, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory LLC, RFG Advisory, or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Private Client Services and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place. RFG Advisory is an SEC registered investment advisor. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of RFG by the Commission, nor does it indicate that RFG or any associated investment advisory representative has attained a particular level of skill or ability.